lives, and a brilliant one.
And Maria has modeled, and now she's acting. Yeah. Oh, she's a housewife. Is she acting at all?
No.
No. And generally, they've stayed out of the press, pretty much.
They've done everything they can to.
Really?
Yeah.
Is that something in growing up with so much of it? I mean, they just ran whenever they could, and whenever the opportunity was there?
I tried as much as I could to protect them from the press, but sometimes they'd be chased. Especially in Europe, the paparazzi would actually chase the kids, and that's so unfair. And I think it really has scarred Liza. I mean, she really hates the press so much. When she got married, her main fear was not that it would rain, it was an outdoor wedding, it was that some paparazzi would turn up. And that's terrible.
Maria, when you adopted Maria, and I did not know this story at all, they tried to convince you, I should say, to not adopt her, but to look for some other child, because there was some sort of a physical disability at the time of her adoption. Or was there more to it than that?
Well, she had what they called a luxation of the hip, and they didn't think she would ever walk. And, well, they didn't know it. She was 8 months old. She was suffering from malnutrition, and I don't know, she was just, the minute I saw her, and took care of her for a weekend. And when I first saw her, she didn't cry, didn't laugh, just sort of lay there like a little vegetable. And then she let her demands be known. She'd cry when she was hungry, when she was wet. And it was like I had given birth to her over this weekend, and she was my baby. And then they told me, this was in Germany, and I was doing Cleopatra in Rome. They told me on the phone that I couldn't have her because she was crippled. And I said, wait a minute, would you say that to me if she had come out of my stomach? That you'd put her back, or that I couldn't keep her because she was crippled? I said, that is my child, just as much as if she had come out of my belly. And I wasn't allowed because of insurance to leave Rome. And I sent somebody else to go and literally kidnap her. I didn't have the adoption papers or anything, and bring her to Rome.
Well, they say a picture.
And then, of course, I got the legal papers.
Yes. They say a picture's worth 1,000 words. Take a look. Do you remember what you were thinking at that point?
I was very happy. That was taken 2 months before Mike was killed.
All of your children very supportive of everything their mom has entertained.
My children are just great.
Were they part of the intervention?
Yeah.
With the Betty Ford
Oh, they sure
treatment?
were.
Yeah. And afterwards...
And that's a very, very brave thing to do.
Yes. I was going to say afterwards, in discussing it with them, what were their thoughts and their fears when they were a part of that?
They didn't know whether I'd tell them to go to hell, whether I'd say it's my life or my death. It's none of your business. I don't want to see you again. And in an intervention, there's no way of knowing how the person is going to react. You put yourself way out on a limb. I've been in interventions, and you take a big chance. And you know you're hurting the person, but you know you're doing it to save their lives.
And would you say what you went through and where you are today is probably the best gift you could have given them?
They gave me the gift of life. Acting lessons, diction lessons, anything in my life. And I was really sort of afraid that it would change my natural swing. And I'd start thinking about it too much when I was performing rather than the intent of the part and the character. So I said, Mike, will you just let me try and think it lower? Will you give me a chance to do it myself, or at least try? And he said, yeah, sure.
I married the SOB. I had it all planned out. First, he'd take over the history department. Then when Daddy retired, he'd take over the whole college, you know? That was the way it was supposed to be. Getting angry, baby, huh?
He said, I think you should lose a lot of weight. And I said, Mike, when I lose weight, I look younger. You want me to look older, so I should put weight on. So I put on 20 pounds deliberately for the part, which was not a ball to lose afterwards.
Must have been fun to gain it, though.
Oh, God, yes.
When you made National Velvet, and which is the movie that really sprung you into the international stardom, did you find that amazing that suddenly you were 12 years old?
Oh, yeah, because it was me. I mean, it was my favorite book, and I was Velvet. I ate, breathed, talked, nothing but horses. I had my first horse when I was 3. It was the only sport I ever excelled in. And, you know, before I worked, I would do 40 jumps in the morning before I'd do anything else out at the Riviera Country Club. So National Velvet was just an extension of me. I even chose the horse for the film because it was the horse that I rode out at Riviera Country Club, and nobody else could ride the animal. He was so mean, beautiful, grandsire by man of war, and a great jumper. I could jump 6 foot bareback on him. It was like flying.
Again, in reading about your career, they talk about A Place in the Sun, directed by George Stevens, and the fact that and you've said it yourself, it was probably the first time when you really had to work for a director.
And it was a young leading lady part. I was 16 and had received my own real-life kiss 2 weeks before. Thank God I made it.
If you don't come, I'll drive down here to see you. I'll pick you up outside the factory. You'll be my pickup.
You'll be the happiest person in the world.
The second happiest.
Oh, Hank, I can only tell you how much I love you. I can only tell you all.
Tell Mama. Tell Mama all.
I was a very young, very immature 16. Even though I played and looked much older.
And of course, you started in that with Montgomery Clift, who became
Tied the knot for the 7th time. The groom was John Warner, then a budding politician from Virginia. As always, she expected this marriage to last forever. In Warner's successful campaign for U.S. Senator, Elizabeth was at his side, drawing crowds wherever they appeared. And as you know, and you and I have talked about it, he is an old friend of mine and someone I know
And
you're
he's an
still
old
very
friend of
fond,
mine.
an old friend of yours. And we did an interview then. Do you remember?
I do, in the kitchen.
In the kitchen.
On the farm.
What's her greatest virtue? What's Elizabeth Taylor's greatest virtue and greatest fault?
Well, greatest virtue and greatest fault. Well, her greatest virtue is that she's made me terribly happy. And fault, she just burns up a lot of food now and then. I don't know. It's hard to say, Barbara. I wish she'd take better care of herself.
Are you worried about putting on weight?
No.
Oh, yeah.
Does it matter to you?
No, it doesn't, because I'm so happy.
But the next time I interviewed Elizabeth was in 1987, 10 years later, on the set of a TV movie. She was now a size 6, and the truth came out.
I didn't enjoy being fat.
Really?
No, I hated it. And I hated all the fat jokes. I probably laughed as loud or louder than anyone. But they hurt.
You'd said that it was the loneliest, one of the loneliest periods of your life.
I think Washington for women is a desperately lonely city, especially if you've been active all your life. Because if you're a politician's wife and don't have your own role, there's nothing for you to do except be supportive. And sometimes I didn't agree with all the issues. So, you know, I really had to kind of keep my mouth shut.
In the end, the marriage didn't work. All the illnesses caused you to take a certain amount of drugs, and more and more. Did you know that you were becoming addicted?
Probably in the back of my head. I'm not stupid. And it sort of eased more than physical pain.
And the drinking?
That was to blot everything out.
How bad was the addiction? How much was the drinking then? Do you remember?
I concealed it quite well. I used to pride myself on having a wooden leg because I was not a fall-down drunk. But I consumed inordinate amounts of alcohol, and combined with pills, it was deadly.
When you decided to go to Betty Ford, you were I think, the first major celebrity to do that. People were shocked. People thought it would be the end of your career. It took enormous courage.
Well, I knew I had to do something or I would die.
You came out of Betty Ford, had a very